Ladies and metalfish, this is your hard-boiled and handsome duelist, Daddy Janjo, here for another off-the-cuff, unscripted, unedited, probably edited, video talking about a fantastic Yu-Gi-Oh set, Invasion of Chaos. This is the set that changed everything. Yu-Gi-Oh was not the same before, and it certainly was not the same after. Now, I did a video a little bit ago talking about Legend of Blue Eyes, the very first TCG set, but Invasion of Chaos was not in the first year, it wasn't the second year, it was the third year of the TCG Yu-Gi-Oh! So we had some time to get into the game. We had a lot of fun decks. The Hand Control Yada Lock was a very powerful deck in late 2003, and then late 2003 we had the Scientist FTK. This was very different in Invasion of Chaos, because while it wasn't as combo heavy, you could say, it was very powerful indeed, and that stems from the name, Invasion of Chaos. It was this set that we got the Chaos Monsters. These cards were absolutely bonkers. Let's talk about them real quick. We got Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the beginning to start. This monster is bonkers, as I'll probably say for a lot of these cards. Never before could you get a monster so easily onto the field, with such high stats, with such powerful effects. You had monsters in the game with good effects. You had Vampire Lord, Tribe Infecting Virus, Breaker the Magic Warrior, Janjo, but it wasn't the same. These monsters you didn't need to tribute. With the Chaos mechanic, you would use a light monster and a dark monster in the graveyard. So all of a sudden, graveyard play was very important to a deck strategy. This is the first time we really saw something like that. Sure, you had stuff in the past, like Monster Reborn plays, using the cards like Painful Choice to send cards, and that was kind of the bulk of it when it comes to the TCG around this time. So attributes became like way more popular in regards to light and dark. And the only thing up to this point that we had would be water decks, off the top of my head. And BLS not only had 3k attack and 2500 defense, which is significantly higher than even a Summon Skull, which would have been the highest attack for a typically seen boss monster, but he has two effects, where you can banish a monster on the field, or if he does attack, you can attack again, and this could just end games. This could control games, change the tide of games if you just slap this guy down, and at this point in Yu-Gi-Oh, you had priority, so you didn't have to worry about some other cards stopping it, like if you activated a Bottomless Trap Hole. The only thing that could stop it would have been a Solemn Judgment, otherwise you had to stop it prematurely with like a Soul Release. And then we have this guy, which is its partner, the Chaos Emperor Dragon Envoy of the End, probably one of the most notorious boss monsters in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! The effect is that you pay 1,000 life points, and then you send as many cards in both players' hands and fields to the graveyard, and it's like 300 to your opponent for each card sent to your opponent's graveyard by this effect. Now, it end up getting an errata where you cannot activate other cards or effects that turn you activate it, which they kind of had to get this card off the ban list, but when it originally came out in North America in Invasion of Chaos, as we can see here, there was no restriction. And it wasn't just your opponent's graveyard either. It was any card of the graveyard. So this thing could just nuke the field, get rid of everything possible, and absolutely decimate your opponent's life points. On top of that, you had the addition where you would combo this with a card like Witch of the Black Forest, where if you had Witch on the field, and you activate Envoy's effect to send your Witch to the graveyard, after both players are completely denied of resources, you're the exception, because you'll get that search from Witch, assuming your opponent doesn't have a recruiter like that, a searcher, in which you would pull into a Yada Garasu, and then the Yada Lock, the Chaos Yada deck, was born and was significantly powerful than the hand control variant of the year prior. Now again, this card eventually got banned, and boy, it was banned for a very long time until it received errata. And then we also had Chaos Sorcerer, which is one of the Chaos Light monsters in a way. Like he's not an envoy, but he's certainly the most otherwise Chaos monster on here, because he has to be summoned same way, banishing a light and a dark, in which you can just banish a monster. So it's kind of like BLS, but not quite as good, weak stats. But the plus side about it was that it was easier to obtain, because it was actually just a common in the set, which was kind of funny. A card like this being a common, you think it'd be at least a super rare, but hey. The thing with Chaos Sorcerer is that it did get its time in the sun. Like summer of 2006 was probably its height, in where there was an environment where BLS and Chaos Emperor were banned, so this is the only one you had. Now back in the day, around this time in the 2004 meta, people didn't really quite play Chaos Sorcerer. And the main reason behind that is because it was a common. That was one reason. People didn't want to play commons. Rarities were kind of important back in the day, just to kind of show, like, hey, I'm playing this awesome max rarity deck. And this is why you would see people play cards like Trihorn Dragon, just to show that they had a secret rare like that. Now, Chaos Sorcerer is a whole different thing, because, I mean, obviously, it does have a place in a deck. Now, in this time period when you had cards like Blackluster Soldier and Chaos Emperor Dragon, you didn't necessarily even want to run this card, because you already had powerful monsters, and in a time pre-ban list, you could play every power card you had. It wasn't just limited to a more specific card pool. So Chaos Sorcerer was kind of the extra card. Like, you would mainly run it if you weren't able to pull either envoys, in which one was an ultra and the other was a secret rare, so they were less likely to be pulled. And then we have, let's look at Levia Dragon Daedalus, which is one of my favorite cards of all time. Levia Dragon Daedalus is really dope. It has a Chaos Emperor Dragon-like effect, whereas Chaos Sorcerer was like BLS, Levia Dragon was like, well, the other dragon. Also, is it Leviat, like Leviathan? I always call it Levia. It's probably a Levia, but I can't stop now. It's too late for me. Go on without me. You send Umi to destroy all cards. Now, the thing with this, that you had to run more of an Umi strategy and more of a way to get it out, because this monster did not have a Chaos summoning mechanic. So you did have to run more dedicated deck. I have made decks around it on my channel. In my deck builder series, I should have a playlist for that, for both a water Chaos deck and more dedicated water deck in the 2004 Chaos format. And then we have Dark Magician of Chaos. Similar to Emperor Dragon, this card also received an errata for it to return. But upon release, if it's normal or special summon, you can add a spell from your grave to your hand, and that's already great. It's like a buffed up Magician of Faith. You don't have to set it, you don't have to worry about a knock or anything else. And on top of that, if it destroys a monster by battle, it's by removed from play instead of the graveyard. So it stops floaters, it stops Sangan and Witch, and it's really great because of that. Unfortunately, when it's destroyed or removed, it is banished too. But you have cards to kind of work around this. They had to have this to kind of give it some sort of drawback. But it was still a great card in addition to a lot of decks, considering in this time period, again, there's no ban list, so your deck probably consisted of all these power cards: Monster Reborn, Change of Heart, Raigeki, Painful Choice, Delinquent Duo, whatever else you played. There's like so many power cards, it's actually hard to build a deck when there's so much great cards that you kind of want to play. One card that actually works with it would be Dimension Fusion, which, yeah, we did have dedication through Light and Darkness, where you can special summon a Democ from wherever, but you had to play Dark Magician, and like, we're not gonna go do that. Whereas Dimension Fusion was also a great combo piece for Democ, because you could bring it back and then get back another spell card, because it'll be special summoned. And this would eventually bleed and evolve into like the emerging Reasoning Gate deck, when that becomes a more of a viable deck option. So Manju, the 10,000 Hands, another great card. You had Senju of the 1,000 Hands, and you had Sonic Bird, which both search out ritual pieces. But Manju for a long time, and still kind of is to this video's date. It's such a great ritual support, because if it's normal or flip summon, you can add either a ritual monster or a ritual spell from your deck to your hand. It didn't have to specify which one like the other two were. It was like both of those, but combined in one. And 1400 attack isn't too bad, and a light attribute is great, because remember, at this point, light and dark attributes are very important. You didn't really see many ritual decks around this time. I mean, maybe like Relinquished, but that was about it. And if we're talking about a lot of these banishing cards, well, Gren Maju Deiza was another like spectacular card. Again, it wasn't one that we saw a lot of play early on. It would eventually evolve to its own deck. The more cards would be released that involved banishing cards and that strategy. I don't recall seeing any real decks like this, but I suppose you could build one. Soul Release is a good card to boost this up. That immediately removes 5 cards. You can use cards like Bazoo, so you could definitely build a deck around this. Maybe I will one of these days. Perhaps I'll post it on my Discord or my Patreon, or maybe do a video about that. There is like a ton of great cards from this. Like, I'm not joking when I say it really changed everything. Let's look at these two right here. Ryukoki. Ryukoki is a great zombie monster. You had Vampire Lord, which was good. Ryukoki is better in some ways because its stats are just better. 2400, it's okay. A Vampire Lord's 2000 attack definitely held it back a bit. And the benefit is that when it battles a warrior monster, it destroys it, which means it hard counters Blacklist or Soldier, which is really good. You see this card a lot in zombie decks, especially around the GOAT format era. Not that you necessarily saw zombie decks in this era, but that's because the Chaos format, Chaos Yada format, whatever you want to call it, really was a tier 0 format. And you can say that about a lot of formats, but this definitely was, in regards to, that was the only deck you saw. And if you didn't see it, it wasn't going to be anything. It was either this or some lesser good stuff. Beatdown deck, something with Berserk Gorilla, which was released in this set, which was a great, it was a great card on release. I played this back in the day too, because I didn't really have any of the Chaos. Well, I did eventually get BLS, but not immediately. Berserk Gorilla, I definitely remember bringing this guy to tournaments, because just seeing a monster with 2k attack that didn't have as much of a downside as Dark Elf was great. Yeah, he had attack every turn. If it was in defense, it's destroyed. But it's like, the whole point of it is to attack anyway. So, I mean, it doesn't cost life points, so I'll take it. Also, I've always thought him to be like a red gorilla. But when he's using the GX anime, he's just like a normal gorilla. And like, it's red from the fire, which I get. But I don't know. I've always saw him as just a defaultly red gorilla. Maybe that's just me. Let me know if you think he's should be normal color or red. Sacred Crane, speaking of reasoning gate decks, another important piece. We would be one set before Monster Gate, so the deck wasn't invented yet. But you can still do a reasoning deck. I did a live stream sometime recently-ish on a deck workshop in which I did make a reasoning deck for the format. A Sacred Crane is still a good card in it, because special summon, you draw a card. Now you gotta figure a way to special summon it out. And the best way to do that would eventually be reasoning / monster gate. But you can still find ways to get it out, whether with a Graveyard Revival. That'd probably be the main thing, or Banish and Defusion. Goodness, we have so many cards we need to talk about. I could be here all day. Black Tyranno was a great dinosaur boss monster, because if your opponents have a bunch of defense position monsters, it can attack directly. And later in, I believe, Flaming Eternity, when we would get Swords of Concealing Light, oh boy, 26 Direct is kind of scary. I kind of wish we see more dinosaurs of early Yu-Gi-Oh!, but that's just, that's just how it is with dinosaurs, honestly, for quite a long time. Boganian, another interesting card, 600. This would be a neat tech and burn decks, because 600 is a good amount of life points, and if you just keep this guy up, and that's all you need to do, just keep him on the field. That can build up really quickly. Curse Seal of the Forbidden Spell. Discard a spell card to negate a spell card, and your opponent cannot activate spells with the same name for the rest of the duel. This is kind of nuts, too. Not really a card you see too often, but honestly, I could see people playing this. Yeah, you have to discard a spell, and it only negates a spell. But if you hit that one power card, like a Reasoning, then they're screwed. Dark Mirror Force, this is a card you don't see. It just banishes all defense position monsters they control, which I suppose does have combo potential. But I just remember this because I pulled this from the IOC set back in a tournament in 2004. You know, it's an ultra rare, so it definitely stuck out to me. And just like, it looks cool. Dark Mirror Force. It sounds powerful. Too bad it's not better. Gigantes or Gigantes, however you want to pronounce it. Another good card for the Earth strategy. Once destroyed by battle to the graveyard, destroys all spelled traps on the field. So a Heavy Storm upon destruction is pretty good. Especially with a monster you can special summon with a defaultly 1900 attack. A lot of other monsters around this time that had that banished summon effect. You had like the Rock Spirit, Aqua Spirit, that kind of stuff back in Labyrinth of Nightmare, and those don't hold a candle to just defaultly 1900 attack plus Heavy Storm. Like, that's, you know, really good for the Earth beatdown deck. Reload would be another interesting card where you can just reshuffle. We had some other cards, like it was like card shuffle, but this is the first time we got a card that, if you wanted to, yeah, it's a -1, but if you really needed to reshape your hand, if you're playing like the more combo deck, it's kind of cool. And this is also a card that I swear to God, I'm amazed this is like the legit artwork. Is this Egypt gun? Like, you would think this is some brand new art for the TCG. You would think the OCG would have like an actual gun being reloaded, but no. No, Controller Chaos right here. This is the art. This is the original art. Can you believe it? I can't. Then we got Salvage over here, where you target 2 water monsters with 1500 less attack added to your hand. This is, I mean, it's literally salvaging cards, and to add just 2 is a great utility card in water decks. Just return any 2. Then we got Smashing Ground, which is kind of like a fissure card, where it destroys your opponent's monster with the highest defense. You know, it's another good form of removal. It just depends on what the meta sees with defense. Sometimes you saw this card be used more than not. You definitely see it more around in the era of like 2007 gadgets, but that's not saying much because no one actually played gadgets. But the neat thing about the card is that this Fist is actually Manticore of Darkness. This would be confirmed by some future cards, Manticore Smashing, which it would have an effect that would use cards like Smashing Ground and Fissure, which I think is a really cool piece of lore, because you wouldn't think that's Manticore of Darkness. And probably the last card I want to talk about real quick is Stealth Bird, another burn card, in which if you can kind of keep this guy going, 1,000 points of damage is pretty high, and 1,700 defense is still pretty solid, all things considered. For some of like the weaker monsters, some decks would still kind of be playing. But Invasion Chaos was such a crazy set. And like, there's a bunch of cards. I could honestly talk about almost every single card in this set and what kind of impact or what kind of interesting thing it could do. Like Blasting the Ruins, 3,000 damage. Like, it has to be worth something. 30 cards and more, it's hard to do, but I remember trying to get this effect off. But definitely let me know what your favorite card from IOC is, what your memory of it, and what other sets you'd like me to just kind of talk about. A lot of these cards I talked about didn't make a significant impact, but the ones that did, oh boy, you best believe it could. Like, can you imagine if pre-errata Chaos Emperor Dragon came back? I'd rather not. So anyway, that's all I got. Talk to you later.